Nixon maxing. What is it? Interestingly enough, the Nixon Foundation has been planning this sort of thing for a really, really long time. They're trying to, in a way, rehabilitate Nixon's image because, look, Watergate, not the best period in American history, but at the same time, relative to the political scandals that we have now, I don't think Watergate happening now would get somebody to resign. Think about, like, I don't know, if like a president taps the phones of an incumbent president or an incoming president, a candidate for president. I feel like that wouldn't get that president to resign. Obviously, I'm thinking of Barack Obama tapping President Trump's phone. But you see what I'm saying is that Watergate now, I'm not sure would be as big of a story. But if you get past Watergate and into what Nixon did and the kind of guy that he was, it actually gets really interesting. And a part of that is the Nixon Foundation campaign for the resurgence of Richard Nixon in like this new online Gen Z form. I want to play you this Instagram, Twitter, social media video clip that the Nixon Foundation put out just to kind of give you an idea of how they're playing in to the online social media culture to kind of revitalize the Nixon name. This is cut 15.
I hate when guys say I am him, because who is him? Honestly, matter of fact, can I meet him? Because I don't know who the f you're talking about.
Okay, so that might have been totally foreign to anything that you've seen, or you're hyper on social media and that's the sort of thing you see all the time. That's like very much like a TikTok, Instagram trend. And rather than putting in like the cool pop star of the day, it's Richard Nixon. And interestingly enough, this has gained a ton of traction. And I find myself wondering, like, why? I've been a fan of Richard Nixon for a long time, but I think that's geographically related. I grew up not that far from his library, and I've been to it a number of times. So that's probably just like a geographic thing. It just happened to live near the Nixon Foundation Presidential Library. But when you really look into it, when you really try to understand the 30,000-foot view, the essence of why Nixon was so successful in his day, and then look to President Trump and go, why is President Trump such a big figure in American politics? You start to see a lot of really interesting similarities. President Trump's 2024 election victory is seen as one of the greatest political comebacks of all time, and it's really not even close. However, if there is one that's close, it's probably Richard Nixon. If you remember, Nixon, ran in 1960 against President Kennedy, didn't go well, he lost that race. Then he came back and decided to run for governor of California, which kind of sounds somewhat similar to possibly Kamala Harris, but she didn't actually end up running. Nixon did run against for the governor of California. He ran against a guy named Pat Brown, who, yes, is Gavin Newsom's grandfather's best friend. But again, all those points aside, Nixon was not, doing great politically speaking. Ran for president, unsuccessful. Ran for governor of his state, unsuccessful. Then in 1968, he pulls off one of the greatest comebacks in American history, political comebacks in American history to the time, right? Again, I think President Trump in 2024 completely doesn't wipe it out, but it makes it so that, yeah, this is actually the greatest political comeback. But at the time, it was the greatest political comeback in American history. And the question is, why? Why was Richard Nixon such a figure that can pull that sort of thing off? I think one of the reasons is kind of encapsulated by like how he corresponded with Donald Trump. Donald Trump started sending letters to Nixon in the late 80s, early 90s, and they corresponded by letter. And one of the letters, Nixon wrote to him in 1990, "Dear Donald, I know nothing about the intricacies of your business enterprises, but the massive media attack on you puts me in your corner." Which just to me just says, okay, so Nixon had that same just grit, drive, screw you. He effectively was a big middle finger to the establishment, which is what promoted his comeback, but what also makes him very, very similar to President Trump. President Trump embodies this idea of screw you, this is my country, this is our country, we are taking it back, and that's exactly what Nixon had. And I think there's so many different rabbit holes I would like to go down, but we just don't have time for it today. Maybe we'll do it a little bit later on. There's a photo of Elvis and Nixon that I really would like to talk about because that story is also fascinating. But just for now, for the time being, I want to play you this clip that the Nixon Foundation also put out. It's having the same kind of like social media type vibe. Tell me if you think this is exactly how President Trump thinks about himself as it involves his engagement with the media. This is cut 16.
I am really the most difficult man in the world when it comes to a so-called public relations firm. Nobody's going to package me. Nobody's going to make me put on an act for television. I'm not going to engage in any gimmicks or any stunts, wear any silly hats, do something for the purpose of getting a publicity picture or the rest. I am not an actor. I'm not a good actor. I'm just going to be myself. And so when people say to me that I've got to change myself, take lessons about how to stand, how to talk, how to act, look in the mirror, listen to my voice on radio, look at myself on television, the answer is I never have, and I'm not going to start now.
To me, that is why President Trump is such a massive political figure. He doesn't try to pretend to be anything. He just says, I'm president. It's like when he went to Sturgis, like the motorcycle rally, and all of the other politicians are like putting on the motorcycle gear and hopping on a Harley, even though they've never touched a motorcycle in their entire life. President Trump shows up in a limousine and says, I don't really like motorcycles. I'm here for the votes. Like, you may think that's crazy politically, but actually people genuinely relate to somebody who's authentically being their true self. That's why I think there's a lot of similarities between Nixon and Trump. That's why I think there's a resurgence of Nixonism, and the whole thing is fascinating and interesting to watch.